Welcome back to another edition of the Throws Doc Podcast. I'm your doc, Dr. Charles Inferno, where we're writing scripts to cure your throwing ailments. And we are here at the Daytona 500 at about 6:45 in the morning, otherwise known as the 590-490 split in good old Rochester, New York. And today, this is like the third episode, or the third time we're trying this episode, in which, it's March 2nd, by the way, Thursday morning. So the last couple days I've tried to record this episode. We'll see if we get this one through here. But over the weekend, I had a message from a couple of athletes that are competing at what's going to be their last chance to move up the Nationals list across Division III, and their messages were very similar. We're here. I'm 32nd. I'm 25th. They take the top 22 to D3 Indoor Nationals. What's some advice, last second, tips and suggestions? And it's really difficult sometimes for me to share, advice to throwers that just really reach out of the blue, just because I'm not sure what their background is, what their seasonal history is, besides doing a little TFRS research. But it's always interesting that it's the, top tier, upper tier athletes that are trying to devour all of this information. And that's not surprising to me in that notion that athletes at the top, athletes that are already great, are typically the ones that want to get better, right? If they're in the top 5%, they want to move up to the top 1%. And with D3 this year especially, and just looking at the men's weight throw, the 20th ranked athlete in the men's weight throw was 1821. That is just unbelievable to me. 1821 in the men's weight this early March. Like a few years ago, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. See, Lewis went in 16. If you threw 18 meters, you had a good chance to make the finals and be an All-American. Now you're not throwing 60 feet to even get into the meet, which is just boggles my mind how deep D3 is, how much more competitive top to bottom, right? Just using the men's weight as an example, you have the national record holder at high 21. You have another athlete, a couple athletes over 20, right? And then all the way down to 1821, where you have, almost 4 meters separates the top from the last. It's possibly going to be the last entry. Where when in 2016, right? 7 years ago, 7 years national difference. Lewis went in number 1 at 1997, and there were a dozen guys over 19 meters, and it was really tight top to bottom. There wasn't as big of a spread. It was like 2.5 meters, where if you threw in the upper 17s, you were going to make it. But back then, they only took 15 athletes to nationals in the men's weight. So you had an odd number of athletes making a meet, where you had the top, or the bottom 7 was flight 1, and then top 8 was flight 2. And there, if you were in the high 17s, you had a really good chance, right? Totally different, outlook and perspective now on this whole competition thing. It still boggles my mind how there's going to be athletes that are going to throw over 60 feet in the weights, and they're not going to make it. And that's a difficult conversation, I think, that might be had, where pre-COVID, that's like all-American type numbers, and now you don't even go. So the advice for athletes on the cusp like that, right? So, and this is what I shared with both of them. It was basically copy and paste message, right? I'll be honest, because there really isn't, at this point, right? I'm recording this on a Thursday. You're probably going to hear this tomorrow, or not tomorrow, the meet happens, right? There's really not much more we can do to get that much better, right? If you look at a season, if you've been training since, let's say you started in November, right? November to March, right? November, December, January, even in early February. That's where a lot of progress is going to happen, right? Not that progress doesn't happen after mid-February, but what I'm saying is your strength levels, all your technical cues, your technique in the circle specific to throwing, right? A bulk of that work, I'd say maybe 90-95% of that is going to come in those early months, where now, a few days out, a few weeks out from the major competition, really what we're looking at is trying to be as comfortable as possible and keep our routine exactly the same, right? Like, you qualified for regionals. If you're not in, I guess in the Northeast where you would compete in this regional competition, if you're going to a last chance meet in Wisconsin or, I don't know, Virginia or Florida or the Midwest, I guess Wisconsin is the Midwest, but you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to one of those competitions, right, you're already in that upper echelon anyway, right? So the last few days, it's just a comfort thing. And I stress that with every athlete that I've ever gone to nationals with, is keep the routine the same. The one thing that we did try to change, if we knew we were going to nationals, right, if we were already in the top 10, that there was, we weren't going to drop 10 slots over the course of a meet, was we tried to practice at the time that the competition was going to be at our competition venue, right, for nationals. So for regionals, if you're competing at, let's say, noon on Saturday, right, we would try and practice leading up to that competition at noon also. No, you have class and you have other things going on which might interfere with that, but typically whatever college I've worked at, it's been our spring break leading up to. So athletes were off, right? Didn't have class. My work schedule when I was at the U of R was extremely flexible, so we were able to kind of mix and match practice to coincide with our competition time. I've talked a lot about these Friday meets and Friday competitions, where really for the athletes who that is their last chance, essentially you're losing a practice day, right? And that's why it's so important to just stick with the routine, stick with similar like rituals, right? Like whatever you do every day, continue doing that, besides obviously going to class. But really, as far as like technique, there's not too much to change. If anything, get a few reps in where you're going to feel a little bit more comfortable. But at this point in the game, there's really not much you can do. I think, and this is just anecdotal, I don't have specific data or evidence to back this up besides just past experiences. More harm can be done than good, and a season can be unraveled over this time if the athlete and coach aren't on the same page with things, right? If athlete thinks, I need to work harder, I need to train harder this week because it's time, that's where things might get a little sticky as far as the coach-athlete relationship, right? Like, hopefully there's a conversation that happened ahead of time. This is what the plan is for this week. This is what your training is going to look like leading up to, and this is what the meet's going to look like. And really, that's it, right? You get your 2, 3, 4 training sessions in for the week, and you go and enjoy. The high school athletes that I have competing at states this weekend, same thing. All right, coach, what's the plan? Same as we've done every week. And it's really boring, and it's really mundane. And that's something, as a coach, I've struggled with in the past, is just trying to get athletes to understand that what we do in track, I mean, a lot of sports really, but track specifically, it is boring, right? You practice, you do your reps, you take your throws, you go to the weight room, you complete your training session, you go to the trainers maybe, and you do some recuperative work, and that's it. And it's 3 or 4 hours a day of just really boring stuff. And it doesn't have to be exciting necessarily, but it has to be something that really keeps you engaged. And like I said, that's the difficult part that I've experienced is trying to show athletes how important these little things are. And you can start doing the little things this week. I don't know how fruitful it's going to be today when you're competing tomorrow, but if you haven't got 6 hours of sleep a night yet, maybe try 7. I just kind of chuckle at that because I don't know, it just we try our best as coaches, I think, and I think 99.9% of coaches put forth our best effort when we're working with our high school and college athletes. And it's you as a coach just need to figure out a way to better be able to engage and hook that. I don't know what the right word is. I don't know. I've had these brain freezes the last couple of weeks. I think it's more of the Italian mind going crazy here. Because when I speak, sometimes if I can't think of something in English right away, it's because in my head it's coming out in Italian first, and then I'm translating it. But yeah, I guess it just, you're really just trying to stay as comfortable as possible. Coaches, keep your athletes as calm and cool and collected as you can leading up to the competition. I don't want to say you hope for the best, but I think most of us expect the best out of our athletes in that competition. And I hope that was helpful. I know there's a lot of rambling and a lot of, what have you, but really it boils down to staying comfortable as coaches, trying to keep our athletes as comfortable as possible over the course of the week. 2, really maintaining the same routines and rituals as far as practicing, training, sleep, like just keeping things the same, not really changing anything for the sake of change before the major competition, right? And 3, not changing anything, right? Don't add an extra turn in your weight technique. If you're a glide shot putter, don't change to rotational all of a sudden, right? Like, keep everything the same. No need to change anything, right? And try and be as comfortable as possible leading up to your competition. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Throws Doc podcast. I'm your doc, Dr. Charles Inferna. Have